It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Yo, how are you guys doing? Okay, or hopefully you guys are doing well. Yeah, sorry, I just got distracted for a second, but I'm Chris. Welcome to the HVACR videos live stream. For those of you that are new here, thanks for coming. Thanks for checking it out. Guys that come all the time and ladies that come all the time, I'm addressing these chats like with an intro and stuff because we've been getting a huge influx of new viewers and new subscribers, and so I know people are kind of curious what's going on here. So I'm an HVACR service technician here in Southern California, and I started making these videos to help my employees. The first two videos I never intended making public. You know, I've said this story a million times. I finally hit the public button and it turned into this machine that it is today. And, you know, it's fun. I never expected it to do what it did. And I probably don't treat it quite like I should, but that's okay because I'm a peculiar person that does things my way. I don't really bend over, you know, I don't do these per se for the money. Don't get me wrong. I do make money from them, but that's not the whole goal of it. It's kind of been something that I have fun doing and I'm passionate about. And yeah, so I'm an HVACR service tech. I've been doing it since 2002 officially, but I grew up in the trade working for my father. So it's kind of like almost all my life, you know, it's just been a thing. I work in restaurant refrigeration and air conditioning, and I already said in Southern California. So all I've ever done is restaurants. I've never done supermarket work, or I've never done residential besides just helping out family members and different things. So I don't claim to be the person that knows everything because I don't. I try to be as honest as possible. I do know a few things, but I also have made a lot of mistakes over my career, and I try to show those mistakes as much as possible and or explain, you know, reasons why you shouldn't do something because of a mistake I may have made or witnessed or something like that. So I'm just trying to help the next guy, okay? That's the whole point of these, is just to share the little bit of knowledge that I have. So thank you guys so very much in the chat. You guys are chatting like crazy right now, and it looks like we have new members. Actually, since the last stream, we've had a lot of new channel members, new Patreon members. I probably don't acknowledge you guys enough, but thank you guys very much for doing that. I do not expect it. You know, it's really cool though. So thanks so much. It does help out a little bit. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Everybody's always asking me all the time, you know, hey, when am I going to sell the shirts? I've got a giant pile of shirts behind me and hats and stuff. They'll be coming soon. They're all back there. I'm waiting on someone. They're working on a website for me right now. I've seen 2 rough cuts. I'm super stoked because I think it's going to turn out the way that I want it to. Like I said, you know, I've been going through this and, you know, I've approved edits and different things. So hopefully it'll be coming soon and I'll make it available. You guys will all know. Okay. Everybody will know. I'll make it, you know, known across social media and everything. So, Greg, thank you very much for becoming a supporter, bud. I really appreciate it. So, yeah, so as usual, I got a bunch of things that, I want to talk about. I want to talk about the last 2 videos that I had, and then hopefully I can address some questions in the chat. As usual, guys, if you guys do have questions, please put them in caps lock. Okay. There's going to be, there's a ridiculous amount of people already in the chat, so there's going to be questions I don't get to. If I don't get to your question, send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. You can keep trying to repost your question until someone tells you to stop, one of the moderators or myself, okay? Most of the time, I'm pretty good at saying, hey, I can't answer that one today. Send me an email, okay? HVACR Wiz, thank you so very much for that super chat, okay? I really, really appreciate those guys. But, yeah, so, all right, let's get on with it. So this last week has been a pretty good week for me. The following week, I should say, and leading into today was pretty good. Mondays are always kind of stressful for me because Mondays are usually one of our most unpredictable days because we usually have calls from the weekend. And then, of course, I decided to start doing these live streams. And I think I've been doing these live streams for almost 2 years now, I think. I'll have to go back and look and see where the first one, but I've been doing them Mondays consistently for a long time now, which is kind of strange because, I usually have to get off work early to be home in time to get prepped for the stream and set everything up and everything. So, yeah. But, yeah, it's been a good week so far. It got a little hot last week for us here in Southern California. So I think we barely just broke 100 last week, maybe just right below 100. This week is cooling down a little bit. I think today was 92-ish or something like that. So it's not too bad. Coming out of this COVID thing, things have been getting a little bit better. Stores have been... sorry, I'm texting something right now. Restaurants have been starting to open up. NCA Fire and Security or NACA Fire and Security, thank you so very much for that super chat, bud. But yeah, restaurants are starting to open back up. They're pretty much all in full swing now. Minus, they have to have limited capacity in their dining rooms. But I think in San Bernardino and LA County, we had some restaurants be able to open up their bars, which is a plus, because when the bars can open up, that definitely adds to sales, and then restaurants can, the whole goal is for the restaurants to make money, right? That's the most important thing. So hang on, I'm adjusting something real quick. But anyway, sorry, I got a little distracted trying to adjust my audio levels. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I think my audio levels were a little bit low, but I adjusted them a little bit. So make sure you guys tell me if I'm clipping at all, okay? So yeah, the restaurants are all kind of open back up, which means that the service calls are coming back in, which is good. So, I would say that before COVID, 6 to 9 service calls a day is what we would get. Not necessarily do, but that's what we would get as a service company. And we went to all the way down to like 3 a week during the COVID thing. And it's kind of picking back up. So right now, all my employees did come back because we had to lay everybody off for a couple weeks while the whole COVID thing was happening. We did bring them all back, and we're all starting to get back to work. So I would say right now we're probably getting 4 to 5 service calls a day, maybe 6, but that doesn't mean we get those all done every day. So that's what keeps us going, and then we have calls from the weekend and different things like that. And then I always have projects I'm working on, or weird particular things that I'm working on. That's why people always ask, are my videos always so chaotic and crazy? They're not always crazy like that. My calls aren't, but for the most part, I take the calls that I know are going to be difficult. So that's why I film them. That way, the whole point of these is to show to my employees. And then obviously you guys get to see them as a bonus. And, so I do get some difficult ones. Anyways. All right. So the two videos that I released this last week, the first one was some overdue cleaning, and that was just a service call, basically. Actually, a service call on a reach-in cooler, and that's something I wanted to talk about. So I know that a lot of these restaurants haven't had preventative maintenance service, some of them since like February, okay, because of budget cuts and different things, and then COVID hitting. So when I go out on a service call, so in some overdue cleaning video, right? And that one, I was going out on a service call for someone, Xerox Runner. Thank you so much for becoming a channel supporter, bud. So I was going out on a service call for a reach-in that happened to have a compressor on the roof. Now, the reach-in I knew had an electrical issue, but because I always look at the big picture, I knew that the refrigeration rack was going to be dirty. So I took that opportunity. I went to the customer. I said, hey, look, I'm working on this reach-in. It has an electrical short, but I noticed up on the roof, the rack is really dirty. That's going to start to affect the box. In order for me to walk away from this comfortable, I need to clean the rack. And they said, go ahead. So I utilized that, okay? Of course, keeping the customer in the loop. When it comes to anything, like today, for instance, I went out on a service call to a customer I don't normally service. They had a water leak, and I went up on the roof, and I noticed that the drain was plugged up, so I blew out the drain real quick. Just took me a second. I noticed the belts are loose, the condenser's dirty, the evaporator's dirty. I brought it up to the customer. Instead of just going in there and solving the problem, right, or the symptom, I should say, you know, I went in there and said, hey, we need to clean this unit up. And they said, go ahead. And then I said, you have 5 other air conditioners. Do you want us to clean those up too? Yeah, do it. Okay, so they're not necessarily calling us for preventative maintenance, but I'm able to get preventative maintenance while on site. Okay, I always walk the roof, look at the ACs. If they're Lennox units, check the codes, you know, look for any things, condenser fan motors running, things like that. So I'm always observant. I'm not ripping the customer off. I'm keeping the customer in the loop the entire time and just basically giving them everything. You called me for a water leak like today, but here's some other things. And if we don't solve this problem, you could potentially have an AC call next week. You can have an iced up coil. You can have all kinds of things that can lead to more headaches. So let me take care of it now, you know, and they bring it up and they say, yeah. So, but the overdue cleaning video, that's what that was, okay? And I like to show you guys the little tips that I use, you know, for cleaning and different things like that. I love that wand that I showed in that video. I always use that. And guys, I'm not really paying attention to the chat right now, but I will get back to it. So just if you're posting something you want me to address, just keep putting it in caps lock and keep reposting it, and I'll get to it, okay? The next video that I had was the beer is pouring warm, and that was a Glycol unit. That was a return visit, not a callback, but I worked on that unit about 1.5 years ago. That exact same unit, it had a refrigerant leak. This time they called me out, and it had a bad temperature sensor for the Glycol controller, okay, which I ended up, you saw, I went and put a temporary temperature controller in it because I knew the customer needed the unit up and running, and I had to order the special sensor from Perlick. So went ahead and got them operational temporarily by throwing in a mechanical temp control. It ran for a couple days, and I returned and put the new sensor back in, and all is well. The customer is happy. Everything is good. I cleaned up their units. Again, big picture diagnosis, you know, looking at everything. I don't go in there and just slam it out. I like to spend time, again, keeping the customer in the loop and talking them through everything, okay? So the Glycol unit, I get a lot of questions about those Glycol units, or a power pack, or mini chiller, beer line chiller. There's a bunch of different names that people call those, but there's really not too much crazy to those units, okay? Essentially, it's just a chiller that the chilled Glycol that we use wraps around the beer lines separately completely. It's not mixing with the beer. It wraps around them completely just to chill the lines when they run underground or above ground, wherever they're going to go. They just keep them cold from point A to point B, okay? That's all that they're doing. They're trying to reduce foaming beer, because when you have foaming beer, you have lost beer sales, basically, okay? So if you're drinking one of those piss beers and you pour it and it's got 3 inches of foam or head on it, you know, the customer's not going to be happy. So you end up pouring a bunch of extra, and that foam is just wasted beer. It just goes down the drain. So if we can keep it chilled to the right temperature so they can get the correct pour, then they can save money, you know, and potentially make more money. All right. So those little power pack units or Glycol units, they are very important. Okay. Same concept. If that was like a process chiller, you know, going to some medical equipment or some manufacturing thing, it'd be kind of the same thing. Okay. So let's take a look at the chat here and see what I'm missing. And See if I'm missing anything important. Remember to put your questions and stuff in caps lock. Is there anything in the HVAC industry I would change? Interesting question, Adam. Adam Neal asked that. Is there anything that I would change in the HVAC industry? I mean, if I had a magic wand and I could magically make more employees pop up, that would be helpful because we're all looking for new employees, right? What else would I change? I don't know. You know, government regulations. Adam, I know you're in Europe, but government regulations, they're just ridiculous. I wish that they wouldn't implement regulations before they figure out how manufacturers are going to follow those regulations and different things, because it seems like the government, again, not getting political, but I'm sure it happens everywhere. It seems like the government comes up with a solution that they're going to get rid of this refrigerant before everybody can really figure out what they're going to do. You know, that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I'd have to think about that one a little bit more, Adam. So do me a favor. If you think about it, send me an email and I'll try to think about that one and maybe address it on the next stream a little bit better. So let's see what else I got going on in here. Let me see. I'm going to go ahead and take that one out of there. All right. Oh, great. So Big Nate saying that, yeah, he's a former draft beer tech, and he's saying 41 degrees loses the CO2 in its solution, and it appears as foam. See, there you go. I'm not a genius when it comes to the beer stuff. I don't touch the regulators. I don't touch the CO2 or the nitrogen, depending on which type of beer it is. That's not my thing. All I'm doing is keeping it cold. But yeah, it's really important because beer sales, you know, that's a huge thing for restaurants. So let's see what else. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take care of that real quick. All right. All right. Adonis, you said you're in the middle of your GED locator test. Right on, bud. All right. Yeah. So I don't test the beer. That's a funny comment that I get on a lot of my videos, is people asking me if I'm testing the beer. No, I don't. I mean, I'll be honest with you, if I asked a customer, they'd probably say yeah, but no, I don't. I just leave it be. I'll usually have the customer, I'll waste some beer sometimes. So really cool tech tip. If you're working on beer, right, or a draft or a glycol unit, and you just repair it, it takes a long time for glycol systems to come down to temperature, okay? Especially if it's been down for a very long time. If the beer lines are really warm going through the attic or down below, it's going to take a long time for that draft beer to cool down in those beer lines because it's not in a walk-in, okay? It's that stuck beer between the walk-in and the taps. So oftentimes what I will do is bring up to my customer and say, hey, if you're willing to waste 2 to 3 pitchers of each beer, I can get you selling beer within 20 minutes. Okay. And what I mean by that is after you've done the repair, if they clear out the beer lines from the beer walk-in to the taps, usually it's about 2 to 3 pitchers of each beer, and just pour those down the drain, they'll have 40-degree beer in no time, because what takes the most time is cooling down that unrefrigerated section of beer lines. So we'll usually do that. I'll have them, you know, waste a couple pitchers if they're willing to. Some customers aren't, depending on some things. But, you know, when they have a really busy Friday night and they need their beer sales, you know, and they're pissing off customers, they're willing to throw a couple pitchers down the drain for sure. So that's a really cool tip if you guys haven't already figured that one out. That'll save you a little bit of time and help to bring the system down to temp. But obviously, don't be walking into a bar and pouring beer down the drain without talking to the manager, okay? And don't ask a bartender either. You always ask the manager, because they won't be too happy if they don't approve of that kind of stuff. So, all right. Which service valve do you open first, suction or liquid? TH. You know, honestly, I don't put a lot of thought into that one, TH. You know, it's that weird question. Honestly, it's never really been an issue for me. So I really don't put a lot of thought into it. The biggest thing about which service valve to open, you know, there's a bunch of different theories there. Are you going to wash oil out of the system? You know, different things like that. But I really don't put much thought into it. I guess if you had to ask me right now, I'd probably open the liquid line first. But, you know, I really don't put much thought into it. So, all right. What's the worst job I've ever had, and what did it involve? The worst job the worst job I've ever had was actually an installation job. I was doing a job for, okay, this whole thing was a disaster. I think I've talked about this before, but this whole thing was a disaster. It was on an Indian reservation. I've never done work on an Indian reservation, and I've heard some good and bad things about working on an Indian reservation, okay? So last minute, a third-party contractor called me, okay? So this guy basically quoted this job and apparently didn't have the licenses to be able to do the work in California. So he was subbing the job out to me. So it was part of a giant construction project working under a general. I was not working for the general. I was working for someone that the general hired, okay? So the red flags were already there. But I went to him and I said, hey, this is what we got to do. They were installing refrigeration equipment all over the place, and they wanted me to hook up the refrigeration equipment that they already had, okay? So I went to go do a site inspection, and I saw this job was giant, okay? And I was a little bit eager. This was probably about 12 years ago. I was very eager. I really wanted to do it because it seemed like a cool challenge, okay? But everything unfolded. It just got worse and worse as the job went on. So I went and did the site inspection. You know, I asked all the right questions. Where's this equipment going? Can you take me and show me? It was on an Indian reservation in a casino. So they took me out to the casino. They had to walk through corridors and corridors. They showed me all this different stuff. This is where this is going to go. There was nothing there. They were building the building basically. So they were like showing me plans and everything. So they started showing me all these plans. It had models and serial numbers. So I took pictures of all of that. Started writing down all the models and serial numbers. When I got back to the shop, I started looking the equipment up, and then I realized there was some major mistakes design-wise in this equipment. The equipment wasn't sized correctly. It wasn't big enough, all sorts of things. I ended up getting the manufacturer who spec'd all the equipment out, and I ended up talking to them and saying, look, this condensing unit that you're sending out here, you know, there's not a big enough receiver on it. It's not sized correctly. It's not the right horsepower. Like, I was going through everything. Because basically, even though I didn't sell it to him, I was going to be the one installing it, and I knew it was going to become my headache. Of course, I would have been able to bill for it, but it just would have became my headache. So started going through that. That was another red flag. I was redesigning their designs. Then they told me, you know, when I asked them, okay, I need to, you know, get a scissor lift where that blackjack table is at. So you got to move the blackjack table. They were like, we can't move a blackjack table. And I said, well, you have to, because I have to work right there. And they said, oh, you need to come in at nighttime. So then the job turned into a nighttime job. Mind you, this job was going to take 5 people. Okay. At the time, that was my entire company, all doing night work at a casino. And it was probably going to be about a 5-day job. So there was another red flag. But we worked through it, okay? Ordered all the equipment, had them redesign everything. I was getting ready to run line sets, and then the time came to schedule the job. Then I went to go onto the job site, and they're like, you have to take safety meetings, and okay, fine. It just seemed like it just kept getting worse and worse. Safety meetings and, you know, signing crap off. We had to wear stupid safety vests, whatever. It's okay, you know? But it just kept adding up. So finally, it came down to it. We went out to do the job. Nobody was there. I had scheduled everything with the general, with the people from the casino and all that crap. And I went to go there. None of the tables were moved. They were not ready for me. It was a disaster. So at that point, oh, and I forgot to say too, I had rented a scissor lift, okay? And the scissor lift they delivered was broke. It didn't work. I had driven it to a far place on the casino property, and then it stopped working. So then we had to get it back to where the diesel truck from the rental company could come and pick up the scissor lift. Then they had to bring me another scissor lift. And then here we are now, the night that I came out to do the work. We're all ready. All my guys are there. We got all the equipment. We're ready to start piping stuff in. We were going to be running all kinds of line sets. And they weren't ready for me. There was nobody there. They didn't have tables moved. Everybody was playing dumb. They didn't know what was going on. Mind you, I scheduled this with multiple people. I had emails and phone conversations. So by now, we are about 3 days into the job of just work from me sitting in the office doing site walks and everything. And we still had 5 days worth of work on top of it, okay? Labor-wise, with all my employees going through all the safety meetings and everything, I was probably a good 5 to 6 hours per employee, plus all my time, which was ridiculous amount of hours. And so that night I decided I was done. It pissed me off. Again, I was working for I was a subcontractor. It was ridiculous. I didn't tell anybody. That night I sent all my employees home. I loaded up all the equipment on my truck. We're talking 20-foot sections of pipe. I had pipe hanging off both sides of my service truck. I loaded it all up on my truck, and I left the job. I didn't tell anybody I was going to leave the job. And the reason why I didn't tell anybody was because I've heard some horror stories about working on casino property and how the rules don't apply there. And once you bring materials on the job site, they own them, like weird stuff, right? Because they're definitely technically a different nation, right? They're a sovereign nation or whatever. So I loaded everything onto my truck and drove off that job site without talking to anybody. And I called my person that I was working for the next day and said, we're done. We're done. I'm not doing the job. Sorry. I ate all my labor. I think when we broke it down, I think it was like $3,000 worth of billable labor that I ended up I wasn't even going to fight him for it. I just said, we're done. We just walked away from it. And I took all my materials back to the supply house. Luckily, they took them all back. And I learned no more construction projects. I'm done with new construction. It's stupid. It's just a headache for me. I'm not set up and geared for that. That was probably the worst job I ever did. It was going to be a fun one too, but it was just the worst job. Just a nightmare. But there's sometimes you just got to let it go. You just got to walk away and just write it off as a loss and say, I'm done. So there we go. That was a nice long thing. Let's see what else we got in here. How are things going in California? California is doing pretty good. It's getting a little bit better. Restaurants are opening back up. I'm in Southern California. My main counties that I work in, the 3 counties, Orange County, San Bernardino County, and Riverside County, and I do the tiniest bit of work in LA County. They're all pretty much opening back up. I think gyms just got the go-ahead to open back up. I think they say we're in phase 3 or something. So things are getting a little bit better. The economy is still messed up. The freeways, the traffic still isn't there yet. So it's getting there. But the fact that the freeways aren't jammed with traffic means that majority of our economy probably still isn't working, which is kind of sucky. All right. Let's see what else. See if I'm missing anything in here. Let's see. Is there any reason I tend to jump stuff out live? You usually turn equipment off and jump things out to avoid shorts. You were wondering if I had a reason I do it the way I do it. Nanda, yeah. First off, you have to be very careful and understand what is going on within your equipment if you're going to be jumping things out. It's very important, okay? Don't ever push contactors in. I've said this so many times. I've learned the hard way, especially, and I'll quote it because I've done so many videos and different clips, Linux package units that have a VFD that has a bypass contactor. If you push that bypass contactor, or actually if you push in the indoor blower motor contactor, when the VFD is energized, you're going to get a surprise. So don't be pushing and pulling. You have to understand sequence of operation and how your equipment works before you start playing with it, okay? So let me see. So why do I jump things out? Well, a lot of my equipment has logic built into it. And what I mean by logic, it has some sort of logic module that indicates trouble problems. Like let's just say a carrier weather maker unit, okay? It'll have a compressor lockout board, and the compressor lockout board will shut the unit down, and you can check power at a certain terminal to find out if it's a low pressure fault or a high pressure fault or different things like that. If you turn power off to it, you reset it, and there's no safety stored in a board or anything like that. Okay, that's an older carrier unit. So sometimes by powering things down, you can inadvertently fix the problem or at least solve the symptom. And then you have a hard time figuring out what the problem was. So, like I was just talking to one of my service techs who was working over the weekend. I said, I want you, because he said, I think this is bad. I think this motor is going bad. And I said, I want you to prove it to me. Okay, and what I mean by prove it is I want you to physically get in there, test the motor, make it do whatever it was doing before they called you, make it happen again. Okay, it actually wasn't a motor, it was a contactor that had failed, I think. Yeah, it was a contactor. So, when he called me and said, I think it has a bad contactor, but he didn't see it do whatever it was doing, I said, prove it. So that's why I don't like to reset things. Whenever I walk up to a piece of equipment, don't start turning, don't start pushing. Observe, diagnose, get your meter out, start checking things, talk to the manager, ask him what was going on, ask him the symptoms, try to get it to do whatever it was doing again in front of you before you start resetting and twisting and pushing and pulling, okay? Because you can inadvertently fix the symptom, which can make it a lot harder to find the problem down the line. Now, there comes a point at which, okay, it's time to go ahead and reset this and just wait and see what happens. But sometimes you can go in there and, figure it out. So that's why I tend to jump things out and do this and do that. Yeah, it can be a problem. If I'm working on a big package unit and I jump out the thermostat, yeah, there can be some chattering and different things like that. But sometimes that's a risk I'm willing to take because maybe I don't want to turn it off and wait for a time delay. Maybe the system has an energy management system and it's going to take 20 minutes for the system to kick back in. that kind of stuff, okay? So you also have to be careful jumping stuff out, especially when you have EMS or energy management systems or funky logic controllers and internet thermostats. It doesn't happen so much anymore, but in the past with the old systems, right? You could short things out if you tried jumping things out up at the unit. Okay. Nowadays the systems have some redundancies and you can, for the most part, jump stuff out, but you did have to be careful in the past. So, all right, let's see what else I'm missing in here. Does my multimeter read potential difference or actual voltage? Sometimes I say the contacts are closed or system is calling when my meter shows 24 volts. Well, it depends on what I'm checking. So sometimes I might, if I'm looking at a contact and I read voltage across an open contact, okay, I would technically I potentially would read 24 volts across an open contact. That tells me that the contact is open. You know, maybe it's not calling. So it really depends on what I'm working on. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Before I forget, and I know the moderator bot's going to post something about this in here, we have got Sporlan has another one of their webinars this Thursday coming up, June 18th. Okay, the webinar is going to be on metering devices, specifically distributors coming out of the metering devices and the importance of them. Definitely something you guys want to check out. Like I've said before, I really do enjoy the Sporlan Supermarket Series webinars. Now, just because it says Supermarket Series doesn't mean that a residential air conditioning technician is not going to get something from it. There's so much information built into these webinars, guys, and I can't stress enough. You guys really need to check them out, okay? I'm going to post a link in the chat right now. But the moderator bot should be posting it too. But definitely register for that. It's this Thursday, 1 p.m. Central Time, June 18th. So definitely register for that, guys. How bad was it working on that roach-infested R290 unit? That's funny. So I posted something on social media last night, a little clip of working on a roach-infested refrigerator. I don't do that very often because most of my restaurants are usually pretty clean, but every once in a while we have a weird situation. So it's not that the restaurant is a nasty-ass restaurant. They just happen to have a rodent problem right now, and they're solving it, okay? So I actually, that clip I took about a week ago, and I had ordered the parts, and I actually went back to go replace the parts today, so I had to clean there were still roaches in it, by the way. So I had to take it outside, clean it out. It was still infested. I pulled all the parts out. I have a video because it's one of those things that it turned into a whole thing again, right? It wasn't as easy as just changing the parts. So I'll be making a video on that. Like I said, I'm not going to reveal exactly what happened, but it's interesting. And, you know, just trying to be safe, making sure I don't get that crap all over me, the roach eggs and stuff, you know. It was interesting. But stay tuned. That video won't be coming, probably not this week, because I've got some parts coming out. But we'll have it coming out soon, and I'll definitely make sure I make a good social media push on that one. Can I explain why a solenoid coil will burn out if not properly seated on the stem? Well, Calvin, I don't know if I can give you the scientific reason, but basically the coil inside the solenoid coil is creating a giant magnet, okay? And it'll overheat. So that's what's happening. The stem actually is the opposite pole, I guess you can say, of the magnet. I don't know if I quite said that correctly, but so if you're ever working on a solenoid valve and you have to pull the solenoid coil off, what I'd highly suggest you do is stick your nut driver, a metal nut driver, in the coil itself while it's energized if you have to do that. And that metal nut driver will help to make sure that coil does not overheat. But yes, it will overheat and burn out if you do not have it tightly pushed down on the stem. But it basically just overheats and then it burns out the coil inside of it. So let's see what else. Do I have experience with Copeland scroll unloaders, 410A air conditioning compressors operation? Jeffrey, I do not, unfortunately, okay? Unloaders essentially just, well, it's hard to say on a scroll compressor. On a scroll compressor, it's just going to vary the capacity of the compressor. But on an old semi-hermetic, it basically was shut down some of the valves or the pistons or whatever, you know, and basically make it only operate on so many. But no, I do not have experience. I cannot really give you any tips on it. So I'm sorry about that, bud. Is there more money in residential or commercial service? That's a great question. It really depends on what sector of the industry you're going into. And I'm actually going to segue this into another one of the questions I have on my list of things to talk about. Okay. So let me find the one, and it's right here. So this question right here, I'm going to answer a couple questions and kind of lump these in together. So Ed had sent me an email, and he's an older gentleman. He's 49 years old, and he's getting into HVACR. He's currently going to school. And he just wanted to know if I had any tips, because he realizes that he's an older technician and he wants to know what part of the industry to get into, if he's going to have problems getting hired on as a 49-year-old man, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, Ed, you are going to have some issues, but it's okay. You're going to be able to find work, okay? But you just have to understand something. And I'm going to segue this into the other question too. There's a whole bunch of different sectors of our industry, okay? You can break it down to residential, commercial, heavy industrial, okay? But then in those, you can go in a bunch of different ways too. You got supermarket refrigeration, which is arguably in between industrial and commercial. You know, you have process refrigeration, you have facility air conditioning and refrigeration, you have, there's so many different sectors, okay? So as an older gentleman, it's going to be harder for you to get into the restaurant refrigeration like I do. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm just saying you're going to have some hurdles, okay? Because I have to work in tiny little cramped spaces. I have to get my fat ass up in attics and climb through things sometimes. I'm up on hot roofs. I'm down in a walk-in where it's really cold. It's slippery surfaces, that kind of stuff, okay? But guess what? It's okay though. Because if the restaurant refrigeration isn't for you, which there's very good money in the restaurant refrigeration, then you can get into kind of like institutional work. You can go work for a school district. See, that would be a great job for you. You can start as a PM tech for a school district, right? Where you work 9 to 5, and that's it. No overtime, none of that stuff. You can go work for a hospital doing the same thing, just doing that kind of work. So yes, it is a little difficult for an older person to get into the trade. Even a heavy person, it can be difficult for you to get into the trade, but there's work for you to do. You just have to kind of find the right little niche to get involved in. So hospital work, school district work, on-site technicians at a big warehouse. Like there's all kinds of stuff out there. Okay, so where's the most money at? It really depends on what you're interested in, okay? As an installer for a residential company, you can make good money. You're going to have to bust your ass. You're going to be in hot attics, okay? But you're probably not going to be working 24-hour service calls. You're not going to be getting overtime calls in the middle of the night as an installer tech, okay? You're probably going to work a semi-normal schedule. You might have to work a Saturday or a Sunday here and there, but I'm sure it's going to be scheduled, okay? As a service tech for a residential company, you're probably going to start to get some emergency service calls, okay? You're not going to run them like the restaurant refrigeration or the supermarket guys, but you're going to get emergency service calls. There's good money to be made in residential, but the downside to residential that I see, and this is just my personal preference, is you have to deal with customers using their own money to pay for things. You have to talk customers into things. You have to become a salesman, okay? For the most part, you're not going to be a mechanic working for a residential company that only goes out and fixes things, okay? Residential companies, again, there is some, I'm not saying there's all residential companies are the same, but most residential companies are there to sell new systems, okay? There's some that do want to do it right and fix it and do the best for the customer, but unfortunately on the residential side, there's not a lot of money in fixing equipment, and the money to be made in the residential side a lot of times is on sales, okay? So as a salesman for a residential company, you may not even pick up tools. You may just be a closer. You're literally, they'll have a guy go out there and introduce himself and, hey, are you interested in buying a new system? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to get my colleague over here, and the closer is going to come in and he's going to sell, and he's going to make a fat commission off of that, So there's good money in residential. The cool thing about residential is it's a great stepping stone to get into the rest of the industry. You get a general idea. You're going to be in a service van. They'll hire more new techs in a residential environment than the commercial people will hire new techs, okay? So you get into the supermarket work, you're going to make insane money, but you're going to work insane hours. You get into the industrial work, you're going to make really good money. You're going to be using your brain a lot, working on ammonia and different things like that. I don't know the hours as much, but I'm sure you have to work your butt off. You get into the restaurant stuff and you're going to bust your ass, okay? You're not going to work as much as a supermarket tech, but You know, you're going to be working long hours. I do 24-hour service calls. About once a month, I get an all-night service call, you know. That's probably not fair to say. Probably about once every 3 months, I get an all-night service call where I have to be out there till 2 in the morning, 5 in the morning, changing a compressor, okay? So there's several different niches within our HVACR trade, and there's so many different places for someone to go. So, you know, if you're disabled, there's a lot of different avenues for you, okay? There's plenty of work. You just got to find it in the right place. Again, going off on a crazy different tangent. TH, where can we get my HVACR hats? So they are not available yet, but I have someone working on a website right now. I said at the beginning of the stream, I've already approved a few edits on the website. We're I'd say probably about halfway through the process. So hopefully soon I will announce it, and I will have shirts and hats available on my website. You guys will be able to purchase them from there. So hopefully soon. All right, let me see what else we got going on here. What am I missing? Really would appreciate it if you guys give the channel a thumbs up. It definitely helps the stream out, okay? So, all right. And I think I missed a super chat a while back. Thank you very much. I think I saw something come through, or maybe a channel supporter. Thank you very much. Okay. So I had an interesting question, and this is probably going to make my buddy Ralph in here is probably going to cringe and be mad at me, but I'm joking. He's not, but someone had asked me, and let me find it right here. Adam had asked me why they are banning R22 when CO2 has global warming, whatever, too. Okay, so why are they banning one refrigerant? Or I'll even argue, why are they banning R22 when 410A is also bad for the environment, CO2 is bad for the atmosphere, whatever. Okay, guys, I am not a genius. This is where the part that Ralph's probably going to jokingly cringe at me, okay? I am not a genius, and honestly, I really don't think about that crap too much, okay? Why are they banning R22? Yeah, I've heard a few things, but I don't need to know why they're banning R22, okay? They are. It's just, I'm here to fix things, okay? And I come up with solutions to fix things. I can't use R20, or I can't use 404 anymore in California on new installations. So I did some research. I found a refrigerant, R448A. That's actually how I got in contact with my buddy Ralph. Ralph is from Honeywell, and I will give him a plug right now because he is always willing to answer questions. And I'm going to post it right here. Here is his email address. If you guys have any questions, hit Ralph up. He will definitely help you guys out, okay? But I am here to fix things, okay? I really don't dwell on the rules and the reasons why, okay? I'm not there to do that. I'm there to fix it. I can't use 404 on new installations. I come up with 448A. It's just another refrigerant. I look at the saturation temperatures. I charge it. I fix it. It works. I'm good. I don't put too much thought into that. So I apologize, Adam, but I don't have an answer for why they're banning this or why they're banning that. My buddy Ralph, I can guarantee you can answer that question, Adam. If you're in here, send Ralph an email, or maybe Ralph will answer it in the chat. But okay, that's not something that I have too much crap going on in my head. My head hurts. I've got too much information in there with work and all this different stuff that I really don't think too much about why they're banning things or any of that stuff. Okay, I just move on with it. Okay. It's not that big of a deal. You know, just find another refrigerant and move on. All right. Let me see what else we got in here. What did I miss? No Coke nose. Nope. All right. What did I miss? Let's see. Go ahead, Ralph. Answer. All right. Dallas fan. Yes, Dallas fan is Ralph from Honeywell. All right. Do I work on Cobra head taps frozen? What are the challenges on those next to regular taps? Okay. In the past, I used to have a restaurant customer that the Cobra head taps, okay, Cobra head taps are really cool ornamental beer taps. And the cool thing about them is if they're working properly, they get about a quarter of an inch to a half of an inch of ice on them. And it looks like a Cobra head spitting the beer out. It's really cool when you have a Cobra head tap, okay? So I used to have a customer that had the Cobra head taps. No, I don't work on them, okay? But I will tell you, in the past, I have had systems that work on them. They are very finicky, especially if the systems are not designed right, okay? So what you need is below freezing temperature in that beer line, right? Or in the glycol, because you need it to frost up on the tap head, okay? The concentration on the glycol has to be perfect. If the concentration is not correct, then you're not going to get the right ice fill on it. Those are the only issues that I really ran into, and I would always lean on the beer technician for that. I would just ask him what temperature does he need my unit set at. I set the temp control for that. He mixed the glycol, and that's how it worked. Okay, so I didn't really put too much thought into what the trick was. I am not a beer technician when it comes to the beer lines. So let me see what else I'm missing in here. Hey to everybody that's in here. I really appreciate it. There's a whole bunch of people in here. Thank you guys so very much. Again, if you guys are just getting in here, post questions in here, okay? Thoughts on R454B from Carrier to replace R410A? It's just another money-making opportunity for me, so it's okay, right? If Carrier's replacing their equipment, all that means, or changing the refrigerant over to another refrigerant, there's going to be some new hurdles that we as service technicians are going to get paid to figure out. That's the way I look at it, guys. I don't really see this as a frustration. Oh, I can't use 404 anymore. Okay, so I got to sell some new stuff, okay? I don't use 404, so I can put 448A in a 404 unit, but I'm going to have to make some changes. Best world, best case scenario, change the condensing unit, change the evaporator, put a different TXV in there, and you're good, okay? So there's some challenges you have to run into when you're working with different refrigerants, and Ralph and I have discussed this. You know, again, that's how Ralph and I met, was me making a video about 404, and he reached out to me through some friends. He reached out through a network and said, hey bud, you're doing something that's not quite right. And he educated me on it, and he was correct. And I wasn't an asshole. I wasn't a dick. He came to me and said, hey bud, you're doing something wrong, but he said it in a nice way. He wasn't being a punk about it. And I was like, oh wow, I am. Okay, cool. You know, and then we learned. But if you're working with 448A, there's some new challenges, some new hurdles. It runs higher discharge temperatures, so that theoretically means the internals of the compressor are going to run hotter. So you might have some overheat issues. So if you're using 448A, you're going to need to do some sort of a vapor injection or a liquid injection to try to cool the head of the compressor off. All right, that's actually going to segue into another question that I have on my list of things to talk about here. So Jonathan had asked me about troubleshooting DTC valves, a discharge temperature controlled valve. I'm going to make it even easier for you guys, okay? A DTC valve is a discharge temperature controlled expansion valve. This right here is a Copeland DTC valve. And I'm going to share another secret with you guys. This right here, this DTC valve, guess what? It's just a temperature responsive expansion valve. And I don't know this to be fact, but just by looking at the build of this, Sporlan makes this valve. Sporlan has made one of these valves for years. But when Copeland started engineering their scroll compressors, they started realizing that on the low temp scroll compressors, they were running really high compression ratios. And when you run really high compression ratios, you tend to have some overheat issues inside the compressor. So Copeland, instead of using the temperature responsive expansion valves that Sporlan makes, they said, hey, can you guys make us one of these, and we're going to re-engineer our compressor to accept this. So Copeland put a rotolock valve on the side of their compressor, takes liquid refrigerant into this, injects it into the compressor, and this is just an expansion valve. That's all this is. But look at the power head. The power head opens and closes the valve at about 193 degrees. That's all you need to know, okay? So what are some troubleshooting techniques, okay, for this valve? This is a DTC valve on a Copeland scroll compressor. Well, one of the important things you need to understand is this is an expansion valve. How does an expansion valve work? An expansion valve takes liquid refrigerant and changes the state of the refrigerant, puts it into the evaporator, or in this case, injects it into the head of the compressor to cool the compressor off. So with that being said, for this valve to work correctly, you need to have a solid column of liquid going to it. 100% liquid going to this valve for it to work right. If you don't have liquid refrigerant, if you have vapor going into this valve, it's not going to work right. Just like an expansion valve. Got an expansion valve right here. I do cutaways of these things. I've shown these a million times, okay? I don't have a cutaway, unfortunately, of this DTC valve, but I will work on doing a cutaway of one of those. So just like an expansion valve, you have to have a solid column of liquid going to this valve. Now, in a perfect world, I've never seen this, but in a perfectly designed system, this valve has a sight glass, a filter dryer, and a shutoff coming to the valve. So that way you can shut off the flow of refrigerant to it and change the valve if you ever needed to. This valve is, it takes liquid refrigerant, basically coming out of the receiver, the liquid refrigerant goes into this valve, okay? It might not be out of the receiver. They might be taking the liquid refrigerant before the receiver. That's why you got to install, if you can, a shutoff valve before this, because if you ever have to troubleshoot this, it could be a problem if you're trying to pump down the receiver and this is getting its liquid refrigerant from before the receiver, okay? Copeland actually has a service bulletin on this DTC valve, okay? The service bulletin, I'm going to post it in here right now. The bulletin is AE4-1299R21, okay? But I'm going to post a link for that thing right now in the chat, and you guys can click on that, and it's a PDF, and you can download it and go to the section that says DTC valve. Okay, and it's going to explain how that valve works. Okay, so on the Copeland Scroll low temp compressors, just so that you know, there's two types of liquid injection you can do. There is a capillary tube style liquid injection, and there is the DTC valve. Okay, the capillary tube style liquid injection basically does the same thing. It just meters the refrigerant into the compressor, but it's going to have a solenoid valve and a current sensing relay that's going to open and close that solenoid valve whenever the compressor is running, okay? So the DTC valve is only going to open whenever the head of the compressor gets above 193 degrees internally, okay? It has a little well in the top. Whenever it gets above 193, that valve's going to open, and it's going to try to maintain about a 200-ish internal temperature in the head of the compressor, okay? Because Copeland tells you they don't want your discharge line temperature, I think, coming out of the compressor. I think it's 200, 225, because once you get past that point, you can start to damage the internals of the compressor and or do some oil breakdown and stuff, okay? So that DTC valve basically does the same thing as a temperature responsive expansion valve that Sporlan makes. And yeah, it just helps to cool the compressor off. So troubleshooting steps: if the head of the compressor's really hot, over 193 degrees, that valve should be open. You can usually see if the valve's open by a frost pattern coming out of the valve. If the valve's not opening, then you got a problem. There's no service to this valve other than on some models, there is a strainer. Look right there. Notice the exact same strainer that Sporlan has on their expansion valves. Gee, I wonder if Sporlan makes that. All right. So this strainer is actually loose. It's the same strainer that's on an expansion valve. You can pull it out and you can clean the strainer. So another reason why to have a shutoff valve before this DTC valve, because what happens if you need to clean the strainer? So if your strainer's clear, the head of the compressor is over 193 degrees, that valve should be opening. There is no repair on that valve, okay? You can't take it apart because the way that they put it together, it's not going to go back together right. So don't try to take it apart because you can screw up the valve. Hopefully I answered your question, bud. All right, let's see what else we got going in here. What am I missing? Why do we need glide, Ralph? Well, why do we need glide? Now, that's something that's going to confuse you, and I'm not even going to start approaching the glide stuff, but Ralph can answer those questions all day long, all right? Remember, though, too, Ralph can only get to so many questions. So if you guys all bombard him with 600 emails, don't be mad if he doesn't get back to them all. He tries, but it's, you know, he's not here to answer live stream questions, okay? But he has definitely helped out a lot of people. So if you guys do have questions, you can definitely talk to him. Crazy Dragon Chan, what's a good channel to watch for residential work would I recommend? Okay, so this is a great question, and I'm going to segue this into a couple other things, okay? So I have a, let me cross this question out. I got to make an effort to highlight things so that way I know I answered them, because then I always forget what I answered and what I didn't answer. So let me see. Great, right here. Joseph had asked me a question about things he can do while he's enrolled in school to better himself. The Susplex, thank you so very much for becoming a channel supporter, man. That's really awesome, bud. So Joseph had asked me about things he can do while going to trade school that can help him to be a better technician when he gets out of trade school. So what I'm going to suggest, there's all kinds of educational websites, okay? There's lots of YouTube channels out there. I'm just going to name a few, okay? HVACR School, probably one of the #1 YouTube channels out there, okay? AC Service Tech, another great YouTube channel, all right? You have HVAC Residential Basics, my buddy Steve, I think he's in here today. That's another great YouTube channel, okay? What I would suggest you guys do, if you go to my YouTube channel, and you can actually see the channels I subscribe to, Okay, you can see the channels that I recommend, but you can also see the channels that I subscribe to. Now, just because I subscribe to a channel does not necessarily mean it's a great channel, okay? Because sometimes I subscribe to some dummies channels too, just because I like to laugh when I watch them. So you guys got to figure that one out on your own. You need to be able to figure out. YouTube is full of a lot of good people and bad people. You need to be able to differentiate between the good and the bad. A good way to kind of get a judgment, a good gauge of whether they're a good channel or not is look at the comments, okay? You want to see some negative comments, but you don't want to see too many, okay? If you don't see any negative comments, then that means that they're probably deleting the comments, okay, for whatever reason. I really don't delete comments too much on my channel. I delete any comments that anybody puts in there when they try to guess a restaurant name. I delete them, okay? Or I try to. I've been getting so many, it's kind of hard to get to them all. I also delete comments whenever people are bad-mouthing or getting into a fight with another person in the chat. I don't like that. That drives me nuts. You can talk crap to me or talk crap about me all day long. I won't delete those. I don't care. That's fine. But anyways, that's one way, okay? HVACrschool.com. That is my buddy Brian Orr's website. Again, I'm going to clear this up right now. Brian Orr and I are two different people. Brian Orr operates HVACR School or HVAC School on YouTube. Okay. His website is hvacrschool.com. I operate HVACR videos. Okay. I am a different person. Brian and I are good business acquaintances. We've talked a few times. I've been on his podcast. That dude is a genius. Okay. I bow down to Brian. Brian is one of the smartest people that I know. He's an amazing dude. So check him out if any of you guys are interested in any way to better yourself when it comes to residential. So those are a few of the good residential channels. There's a lot more out there, guys. If I failed to mention one of my buddies' channels, I apologize. Adam, thank you very much, man. Let's see. HVAC Overtime is bad people. On that note, give away a 26-ounce Yeti with a chug cap. Okay, I will do that. So HVAC Overtime too. Let's talk about that. Okay, Adam is my buddy, and along with myself, Adam, Joe, okay, and Bill, Curious HVAC guy. Joe is HVACR North. Adam is A-Team Adam. We do a show Friday evenings on YouTube called HVAC Overtime. Well, I should say they do a show, and occasionally I make it to the show. Sometimes I don't make it to the show. Okay, I'm kind of that oddball guy that tries to make it, but yeah, you know. But anyways, we do a show on there. Adam wants to give away a Overtime Yeti tumbler. If you guys haven't already, definitely go subscribe to the Overtime channel. We're trying to do these live streams more and more. Yeah, let me see if I can do a giveaway. I think I figured something out, so I'm going to try something real quick. If I screw this up, well, then I screw it up. But let me see if I can do a giveaway. I'm clicking on something right now, and let me click giveaway, and we're going to, let's see. No, that's not it. Let me see if I can do, looking to see if I can. I can't. See, I don't know how to do this in here. I use Streamlabs, and I get confused in Streamlabs. So, let me think about that for a minute. Adam, don't let me forget. I'll try to think of a way I can do this giveaway, because I don't want to just draw a name. Yeah, and I don't have participants. I see all the participants right there, but I don't have a way of doing a random giveaway on this right now. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. So let me think about it for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and get to another question. Don't let me forget about that. All right. Yeah, Brian on HVAC School has daily tech tips. Just go to hvacrschool.com, go to his website. A pop-up will come up asking you to sign up for his tech tips. You're not going to get any spam from it. Sign up for his tech tips. That dude's a super genius and puts crap out all the time. He's awesome. So, all right, what is the difference between economy mode and comfort mode on Honeywell thermostats? Economy mode is going to be less aggressive on the cooling. You're going to want to read your user manual, but you can just kind of think about that one. Economy is going to save you money. Comfort is going to basically be more aggressive and turn the thermostat on and save less energy. So economy mode might have more less cycles per hour or something like that. But probably want to dive into the manual, and it'll probably help you a little bit more. Do VFDs make ACs more efficient? HVAC Smith. VFDs basically, hey, what happened to my screen? My screen went away. Hold on just a second. Something disappeared here. Let me turn this off. Something happened. What is it? That's weird. Something went away. Huh. I wonder where my screen went. VFDs, basically, they can save energy, but they can also cost the customer a lot of money. So a VFD is a variable frequency drive, okay? It's there to slow down, speed up motors, act as a motor starter, do different things. It has safeties and a logic built into it. It can make a system more efficient, yes, but if it is not protected electrically, if you do not have good, here comes the Coke nose, damn. If you do not have good power coming into the building, which I've shown several times in a lot of my videos, or if the VFD is installed in a horrible location, such as in the supply airstream of the package unit right next to the indoor blower motor where it gets cool and damp and hot and sweaty in the winter, you're going to have high failure rates, okay? If a VFD is installed in an equipment room that's conditioned and filtered air and has proper power conditioning going to it, it'll probably save you a ton of money, okay? So yes, VFDs can save you money, but they can also cost you a lot of money in my situation because they come installed in package units to try to save money, and they go bad all the time because they're installed in poor power, you know, in horrible locations, and they just, you know, short out and different things like that, so... now, I don't know why my screen disappeared. That's weird. All right, I'm going to pull something up real quick. My screen disappeared that I usually monitor the chat and everything on. So let me click on this, and let me click on Manage, and it'll pop it back up. It is weird that it went away. All right, let's go ahead and go into this live stream right here, and there we go. Okay, so we're back up and running. I don't know why that went away, but it's back. Okay, let's see what else we got in here. Is it all vapor in the evaporator? No. Coming out of the expansion valve is a liquid and vapor mixture. But you're going to try to change the state of the refrigerant coming out of the evaporator to completely vapor as much as possible. So let's see. What do I think of Carrier Eco Blue? That's interesting. So Carrier Eco Blue, if it's what I think it is, that's that new fancy ECM evaporator fan motor. It's like an axial fan motor. I'm intrigued by it, but I also think that installed in the situations that my kitchen ACs come in, or my restaurants that have like grease in their ducts and stuff like that, I can see that Eco Blue motor just getting gummed up with grease. Also, the installation of an Eco Blue system, if it is, again, hopefully I'm talking about the right thing, but if it is what I think it is, the installation is a little bit different too, because it involves using a manometer on startup, making sure that you have the static pressure set right, and then you set the speed taps and different things like that. Unfortunately, I hate to say this, but our industry, some of our industry is not smart enough to be able to properly set up a system like that, okay? And it's going to lead to some service calls and some headaches. Of course, I want our industry to get better. I want our industry to take time and learn how to use a manometer and learn how to set systems up, but you have to be honest, and there is a lot of techs out there that don't know. With that being said, without naming names, there was someone that reached out to me that wanted some help with something. It was, I'm not going to go any more than that, okay? He wanted help with something, and he came to me with a problem. He said he watched one of my videos, and he had an issue with an air conditioner, and the gentleman was not willing to do things right. And I kind of wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. Adam Neal, thank you so very much for that super chat, man. That is awesome, bud. Thank you. Again, you don't have to do that, bud, but thank you so very much. But anyways, the guy reached out to me, and I could tell by the way he was questioning me, you know, about the problem he was running into, that he probably wasn't doing things right. But I bit my tongue, and I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I started asking him questions, and he was telling me, you know, his pressures are way off on an air conditioner, and he was having issues with it. And, you know, he wasn't willing to do things right. Bottom line, what it came down to was he did not weigh in the charge. He charged by pressures, just winging it, okay? I can pretty much guarantee that he didn't evacuate the system properly. I can pretty much guarantee that he has some underlying issues with that system. And, you know, there's a lot of people in the industry, maybe they just don't know, and maybe that's a fair thing to say. I'm not knocking the person that called me, okay? But maybe he just doesn't know. So that's what I try to show in my videos. I try to show this is why we recover things. When I cut a compressor open and I show the copper plating, this is why we pull a proper evacuation, okay? Unfortunately, there's a lot of people in our industry that don't realize that in a perfect world, you really should not pull a vacuum through a manifold gauge set. Okay, now I do it, and I will say that there's a time and place to use a manifold gauge set. But there's also a time and place to not use a manifold gauge set. And your evacuation is going to go a lot faster if you don't use a manifold gauge set. Also, if you use the micron gauge in your manifold gauge set, I have a micron gauge in my manifold gauge set, and occasionally I will use it. But you also have to understand that is not necessarily going to be an accurate reading, because the closer the micron gauge gets to the system, even 4 foot away from the system on your hose, even if you blank off all the valves, the micron reading in that is not necessarily going to be accurate. I bet you, if you guys did an experiment and you took a micron gauge on a fully opened system, okay, I'm not talking a pump down system, not a residential pump down. You have to be on a residential system that has the compressor open to atmosphere, the evaporator open to atmosphere, and the entire line set open to atmosphere. If you put a manifold gauge set on there and you pull an evacuation, but you also take a micron gauge and you put it somewhere on the suction line, in a perfect world, if you can go put it at the evaporator, okay, you're not going to have the same reading on the manifold gauge set as you are the micron, the standalone micron gauge, okay? Now, does that mean that everybody has to go spend $1 million on micron gauges? No, and I'm not saying you have to be a perfect tech, but what I want you to do is understand that if you are going to use a manifold, it's not always the best, and so you are going to have to think outside the box and know that just because your manifold says 500 microns doesn't necessarily mean it's actually at 500 microns in the system. If you think about it, a manifold gauge set, when you hook up your process hose, right? Hopefully not your yellow hose on your manifold gauge set. Hopefully you're hooking a 3/8 hose at a minimum. But anyways, okay, so you hook up the 1/4 inch process hose on your manifold gauge set. Well, guess what? That micron gauge is right above that process hose, okay? So as your vacuum pump is pulling down, it's actually pulling on the micron gauge faster than it's pulling on the rest of the system. So yeah, you put a manifold gauge set on that system and it says 500 microns in 4 minutes. Yeah, but shut down the gauges, or shut down the vacuum pump, isolate it, and leave the gauge handles open so that way the micron gauge is reading what's in your system, and watch that rise up way above 15,000 or whatever, okay? Understanding how the systems operate. So we don't have to all be perfect techs, because I'm not a perfect tech either, but you need to understand that it's not just as easy as what you think. You need to think outside the box. Just because a manufacturer puts a micron gauge, I've literally had this thing. Why would this manufacturer put a micron gauge in there if they didn't want you to use it? Think about that one. Why would a manufacturer put a micron gauge in a manifold? Let's think about it. Do you think the manufacturer wants to sell something? That's their business, is to sell stuff. Now, is there a time and place for a micron gauge in a manifold? Yes, there is. But just because a manufacturer does something doesn't mean it's right. Okay? So just because they're selling something doesn't mean it's going to work like they say it's going to work, okay? You need to do some research yourself. I know I went off on a total tangent as usual there, but hey, it is what it is. All right. Let me see what else we got in here. Do I recommend heat pumps for residential use if you have solar? Well, I mean, think about it, Andy. Sure. I mean, if you can get enough solar energy and maybe you have batteries and it can actually run your heat pump, why wouldn't you? I mean, I'm sure there's a reason. I would say that you probably need to have some good power conditioning, but most solar setups do. Yeah, I mean, if your solar panels can power your heat pump, why not? Because then you could run your heat pump for free, theoretically, right? So go for it, man. All right, let's see what else. So what's the right result? Confucius says. I don't know. The right result is just understand how, I don't know if you're asking me, but basically you just need to understand that just because there's a micron gauge in your manifold gauge set doesn't mean that the reading on there is accurate. You guys need to think past that. You need to look at it and think about it. So do I always pull a perfect 500 micron vacuum? No, but the fact that I think about it is the important thing, okay? Emilio, dude, that super chat is flipping awesome. Thank you so very much. So you have a York rooftop that has poor airflow in the kitchen after a remodel gets too hot. Told the customer multiple times it's due to the ductwork, and you've spoken with York and they say the unit is working properly. Anything else you can try? Well, if you spoke with York, so here's the thing. If it has poor airflow, then nothing's going to work right, okay? So yeah, they need properly sealed ducts, okay, that are sized correctly, moving the correct amount of airflow through it. I would highly suggest trying to use Measure Quick. Measure Quick is going to give you a pretty good airflow estimate on the system, okay? And it's going to give you an idea. It's not always completely 100% accurate, but it's going to give you a pretty ballpark idea and let you know if your airflow is really low, okay? But, I mean, if you're saying it's low, it's probably low, okay? But anything else past, no, there's not really any secrets or anything like that. I mean, I guess you can open an outside air damper, but that's only going to mix hot air in with that. I mean, that'll give you the airflow that you need, but that's going to give you hot air, so that's a problem. Let's see what's going on in here. Someone just texted me. And, oh, okay, cool. Let me see. Oh, I don't know why that just came through, Adam, but it just, your text just came through right now. All right, let me see what else we got in here. Was there a part that went bad right in front of me while I was working on a service call? Yeah. Transformer shorted out because I touched the red wire to the ground while I was holding it. There's plenty of parts that I made go bad over the years. But yeah, I mean, I've seen condenser fan motors fail in front of me. I've never seen a compressor terminal plug blow out. I've heard a lot of people say that, but I've never seen a compressor terminal plug ground or blow out in front of me. Probably the one thing that scared the crap out of me the most was I was working out in the Coachella Valley. That's the Palm Springs area. It gets ridiculously hot out there, so it's probably about 115 degrees outside. On the roof, it was easily 20 degrees hotter than that, and I'm not joking. It's usually about 20 degrees hotter on the roof. So I was working on the roof. It was a 410A system. It was down, so I started it up, so it was under heavy pressure. I think I was pushing 600 PSI on the high side. And I was checking something out, and I put a panel on the unit, and I walked away for a minute, and something, boom, blew up, and then started pissing refrigerant everywhere. And it scared the crap out of me. And it actually blew my refrigerant hose apart. So I must have had a weak refrigerant hose because 600 PSI is not the burst pressure of a refrigerant hose. But I probably had a weak refrigerant hose from being in my van. It was probably old. And under the stress of the high condensing pressure, it blew the hose apart. And that scared the crap out of me one day. Yeah, that one, whew, man. All right. Do I think it's okay to use my low pressure gauge on my manifold on the middle of a 0 and 5 PSI to braze if your CO2 regulator does not have a braze feature? Okay, great question. So is it possible to self-regulate? Theoretically, Sean, you should use nitrogen. You can use CO2, but it needs to be like hospital grade dry CO2 that doesn't have a lot of moisture in it. But same thing with nitrogen too, because sometimes nitrogen does have moisture in it. But regardless, can you use a regulator or can you use your manifold gauge set to purge nitrogen or some sort of a gas to displace the oxygen in a system while you're brazing? You can use your manifold, yes. It's going to be a little bit finicky to try to dial it in. But yeah, you definitely can. If you can't find the regulator, if you Western Enterprises, I think, makes a VN 500, I think is what it's called, and it has a braze feature on it. But you can also buy a normal nitrogen regulator, and TurboTorch makes them, and there's a couple other welding gas companies that make them, and they have a braze chingus that you put on the end, and then your hose goes onto that. And basically, it has a little ball in it that you float, and you set it for like 5 SCFM or something like that. So basically the ball is just barely floating. But so if you have a nitrogen regulator that doesn't have a braze feature, you can add a little chingus onto it, and it'll allow you to flow nitrogen at the correct flow rate, so that way you can do it. But you can do it with your manifold gauge too. There's going to be a time when you might overpressurize the system. So it's possible though. All right, let's see what else. Let me see. I know I'm missing a lot in the chat, guys. Mr. Ice had actually asked me a question about, I kind of already answered it, but about how my company's doing. I addressed it at the beginning, but we're doing better. So during the COVID thing, we did have to lay all of our guys off. They were on unemployment for a while, but they all are back, and we're starting to work a lot again. I think I said we were going from 6 to 9 service calls before COVID, and we're probably up to 4 to 6 service calls a day that we get called in. That doesn't necessarily mean we do that many in a day. That's another question I get all the time is how many service calls do I do in a day? Well, first off, I give the attention to a service call that I need to give to it, okay? Yes, there is a time in the middle of the summer that I don't get to do the whole big picture diagnosis, but I usually will get them, I'll put a fire out, get them up and running, and then try to follow up, okay? Sometimes when we have a heat wave and I'm just going around resetting pressure controls, yeah, I don't get to spend a lot of time. That's the crazy 2 weeks in the summer that is just nuts, okay? But for the most part, I give my customers the amount of time that it takes, okay? Keeping the customer in the loop, because sometimes the customers don't want you to do a big picture diagnosis. They don't want a big picture repair. They just want it working. Okay, so be it. I document everything. Customer did not want me to go through the system, had a bad condenser fan motor, changed it. System is cooling. Temperature differentials 18 degrees. Out of sight, out of mind. They said to go with it. Okay, so I don't investigate any further. But on average, I would say I get 2 to 3 service calls done a day is what I do. 2 to 3. My service tech's probably about the same, 2 to 3 service calls a day. And that's billable time. We bill out for all of our time. So each one we do spend, anywhere from 4 to 6 hours on each call, for the most part, depending on what it is. Sometimes, yeah, we may get an easy one and we're only there for 15 minutes. We bill for an hour because we have a 1 hour minimum, that kind of thing. But for the most part, 2 to 3 calls a day. I'd say 3 to 6 hours per call, depending, so. All right. Let's drink every time I have Coke nose. Yeah, I do that a lot. And I'm drinking Waterloo sparkling water today. It's watermelon flavored. This is actually really good. I don't drink like sodas or anything like that. And this is just like has a really slight watermelon taste to it. So no alcohol or anything like that. All right. What else? Not residential AC units. R290 will burn how... Oh, I don't know. That's a conversation you guys are having. I noticed that my moderator bot just posted my TrueTech Tools thing. So do me a favor, guys. If you guys are considering any tool purchases and you choose to go with TrueTechTools.com, I do like TrueTech. They have a great thing. I have like a affiliate code with them that'll save you guys 8% on your order. The affiliate code is Big Picture. One word. Big Picture. Picture as in picture on the wall. Okay. Not pitcher of beer. It's picture, big picture. My tagline, right? And you'll save 8% on the order, and I get a small commission. So if you guys are going to buy tools, do me a favor, use my offer code, okay? All right. Have I ever been called out midstream? Yeah, I've gotten service calls midstream. I've never left in the middle of a stream. But yes, I have gotten called midstream, finished the stream out, and then went and did an overnight service call where I was gone for 5 hours. Yeah, done it many times, so... All right, let me see. Okay, so you're starting work for HVAC. Do I recommend TrueTech Tools starter kit bag? I don't know what the TrueTech Tools starter kit bag is. Okay, so that's a great segue, though. Okay, so you're a residential tech, right? And you want to know what tools to buy. First off, when you're in school, if you already did this, it's okay. But I don't suggest you guys go buy a crap ton of tools while you're in school. Okay? Unless it's required by the school. What I suggest you do is once you get hired on with something, you start talking to them. They're going to know that you're new, and they're going to tell you what tools they work with and what tools they supply. Okay? So are you going to go out and buy a recovery machine and a vacuum pump and torches and all this different stuff? Because guess what? If you came to work for me, I provide all that. The only thing I don't provide is a manifold gauge set and a tool bag with hand tools and a cordless drill. Okay? Every company's different. So you go to other parts of the country, California, that's a pretty common thing in the commercial refrigeration, restaurant kind of stuff. They provide everything for the most part, except for your hand tools. So don't go buying a bunch of tools until you know what you're going to do. Going and buying a bunch of sheet metal tools and different, duct knives and all that stuff. Are you going to be doing installations and ductwork? Because I don't. I happen to have sheet metal tools at my shop, but I don't keep them in my van. I don't ever use sheet metal tools, so I don't have a need to have them other than a pair of tin snips in my bag because I don't do ductwork. So don't go and don't blow your wad on a bunch of tools. I know it's exciting and you want to, but don't go spend a bunch, okay? If you want to spend some money, go buy an S-Man manifold. Okay, yeah, that'll cost you $400 or $500 or something like that. Yeah, that's a bit, but that'll work for you and that'll do really well for you, okay? But you don't have to have an S-Man just because I said. You can go buy a normal compound manifold gauge set, okay? It'll work just fine. You can do the same things with a compound manifold gauge set that you buy for $100 than you can with an S-Man that you buy for $500. The S-Man just makes it a little bit more convenient, but it is awesome, okay? So don't go spend a bunch of money on stuff that you don't have. Rookie, Scott, thank you very much for that super chat. Greg, thank you very much. What is my opinion, Greg, on R290? What's my favorite refrigerant? I really liked working with R22. I still work with R22. R12 was fairly easy to work with too. If you talk to anybody that's been in the trade for a long time, they're all going to tell you R12 was one of the easiest refrigerants to work with because it was very forgiving. You know, mineral oil that R12 worked with did not absorb moisture as easily as polyester oil did. It wasn't as big of a deal. So R12 was very easy to work with. What do I think about R290? R290 is just another way for me to make money. I'm not afraid of it. I don't care. I work with R290 every day. I was working on an R290 system today. Doesn't bother me. Some safety procedures I have to follow, but I'm not worried about it. Okay. R290, you know, right now is currently limited to about 150 grams of refrigerant. That will be increased as the future comes, and you'll start seeing systems that have more than 150 grams. By the way, 150 grams of refrigerant is like 5.67 ounces or something like that. It's so minuscule, guys. So I'm not afraid of it. It's just a money-making thing for me. So let me see what else we got. Thank you very much, RC Tech, for that super chat. Do I know if there's a refrigerant valve that only controls the amount of refrigerant? Oh, I saw your email. I didn't get a chance to answer it. So a refrigerant valve that controls the amount of refrigerant flow without acting as an expansion valve. Love my videos. Not really. I mean, that I can think of right now. I need some more context in what you're trying to do. So if you send me an email, RC Freak, I know you already sent me one, but send me another email and tell me what you're trying to do. Then I can better educate you on what kind of a valve would help you in that situation. Because we have shutoff valves, we have solenoid valves, we have pressure regulating valves, we have all kinds of different things. But I need to know what it is you're trying to do with that and why you're trying to regulate the flow without changing the state of the refrigerant. So give me an email with that context and I'll be able to answer that a little bit better for you, okay? R12 was the shit. Yes, it was. I still have a couple R12 systems out there. I still have a brand new drum of R12. Well, not brand new. It's probably about 3/4 of the way full sitting in my shop. I have a drum of 502 sitting in my shop. Don't work with it very often, but I have it just in case I come across a customer that needs something working. Let me see what I'm missing here. All right. What systems did I work on today? I worked on an R290 refrigerator, and I also worked on that reach-in refrigerator that was all infested with roaches that I posted on Instagram. So that's what I worked on. And then I blew out a drain on an AC. So let me see what else we got in here. Do thermostat transformers go bad often? No. Transformers do not go bad that often. Usually something causes them to fail. For the most part, most of the parts out there don't just fail. They're murdered some way or another. So, why do so many Copeland scroll compressors chatter after pumping them down to like 5 PSI? Great question, Mobster. So Copeland scroll compressors are not meant to pump down. The valve inside the compressor, that's actually the refrigerant bleeding back by. So if you pump a Copeland compressor down to a vacuum, when you turn it off, what you'll hear is it'll make a sound or something like that. And actually, that's the refrigerant coming back out of the compressor because it's not meant to pump down that low. Copeland compressors, I mean, you don't want to pump one down past 5 PSI. If it's making that sound, it's pumping down too low and the refrigerant's bleeding back through the compressor. You need to raise the cutout temperature a little bit higher. All right. R12 was easier on compressors and everything. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go back to okay, so I came up in the trade and I was taught by an old school technician, my dad. And my dad was taught by old school technicians also. When I first started working with my dad, we did not have a vacuum pump in our truck. We did not have recovery machines in our truck. Okay. I was a little kid, but we didn't have them. You know, you purged and it wasn't right, but you could get away with it because systems were very forgiving. So in the past with R12 had mineral oil, it was very common for people to purge the system. So if you pumped it down, you'd open up the receiver, you'd take the suction line off the gauges and you'd purge it until you saw a liquid refrigerant coming out, put the gauge back on, and people didn't vacuum stuff down. Now, I'm not saying it was correct, but that was the old school methods, okay? Because R12 systems were very forgiving. Now, did that cause problems? Did that cause non-condensables? Of course it did, okay? Yes, it caused issues, but it was just very forgiving. The equipment was, you know, air conditioners were like 6 to 8 SEER. Refrigeration equipment, condensers were way oversized, so if it had non-condensables, it wasn't as big of a deal. As the future has come, You know, system efficiencies have gotten better. The tolerance is very tight. They're not oversized anymore. We use polyester oil. You have to make sure you pull proper evacuations. You have to make sure you do things correctly. All right. What is the test needed? I missed a question there. I lost that question. Dang it. Is there a service call that I got? Yeah. Changes are just an opportunities. What is my NACA Fire and Security? All of my social medias, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook can be found by simply searching HVACR videos. That's all you got to do. That's my handle on Insta, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. All of them. It's just HVACR videos. You can find me on everything. All right, let's see what else. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give away Adam's Yeti tumbler. So I don't have a way to do this. Wait, maybe I do. Hold on. Let me see. Do I have a way? Live stream settings. Live chat. Let me see if that pops up. Enable moderate. No. I don't. See, I do not have a way to do a giveaway on here right now. Okay, well, I'm just going to pick someone. It is what it is. One of these days, I'm going to have to get smart and find a random comment picker that I can do while I'm on a live stream, but I can't right now. So I'm just going to scroll through here and pick a random comment, and here we go. Hold on, let me go through. Okay, let me try to find a way to make this fair so I'm not picking someone. So whatever it lands on is what it lands on right here. The 98 DeVille. The 98 DeVille. What you need to do is send an email to hvacovertime@gmail.com. Okay. Permitting that you live in the United States, Adam will answer the email, and he will send you a Yeti tumbler. Okay. So hvacovertime@gmail.com, and send Adam an email. Okay. All right. I'll get better at doing this stuff, guys. Okay. All right. Let me see. The giveaway is done. All right. Let me get to my list of things to talk about. Let me cross off. I already answered that one right there. Guys, I want to say that, you know, in my videos, I make mistakes all the time, and I try to show them. I try to show those mistakes because I try to make it as real as possible. When I first started my YouTube channel and it started to take off, I started to feel really bad because I felt like I wasn't being real in the videos. Even though I wasn't making it look like I solved things, I just felt like I was editing out mistakes, and I was editing out something that I screwed up, and I felt guilty about that, right? And people started leaving comments like, oh man, you're this perfect service technician. You're the best, you know, this, that. I'm not, guys. I am not the best. I am not a perfect service technician. There is not a perfect service technician out there. If someone tells you they're perfect, they're bullshitting you. They're not perfect, okay? Everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes. I screw things up all the time. I've been trying to make a better effort of leaving mistakes in the videos, of leaving my mumbling of, oh, dang it, I said that wrong or whatever. So you start seeing that pop up a little bit more. I just wanted to address that because someone had commented about it. Joel, thank you so very much for becoming a channel supporter, man. That's awesome, bud. Oh, Jeffrey, right on. Field piece probes. Yeah, those are awesome, dude. I really like. Thanks. Yeah, cool. Thanks for using the TrueTech cool thing. Yeah, that's awesome. Cruxus, thank you, dude. I do have the ability to do giveaways, but I just can't figure it out. I'm slow when it comes to Streamlabs. So, I'm in the freaking moderator thing right now. Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'm not going to waste my time stumbling through this. Guys, I am not a genius when it comes to this live stream crap and stuff. If someone has a way that they can tell me how to do it in Streamlabs, send me an email. I'm sure it's right in front of my face. It's probably a button that says giveaway, and I just don't see it. I'm not a genius when it comes to streaming at all. So, all right, let's see. What do I do with a customer that has an undersized system and it's not working very well? Well, I'm just going to give the customer all of the options. So let's say it's an air conditioning system and they can't cool down the building. You know, they have massive balance problems or whatever. You know, I'm just going to do everything that I can. So in this situation, I'm going to give you an example because I have a perfect example. I was talking to someone about it today. I've actually made a video about it. I had at a restaurant that from day one, they've complained about smoke in their kitchen. Okay. And This is a captive air direct drive exhaust fan. I made a video because I had to cut the damn shaft to do it. Dennis McClaffin, thank you very much for becoming a channel supporter, bud. That's really awesome. So I had a restaurant that had issues with the exhaust fans, and I kind of had a hunch. So I had a feeling, because I did some research and I checked static pressure on the exhaust fan, and I really had a strong feeling that the ductwork was undersized for that restaurant. But here's what I did. I did not have the confidence in myself to tell the restaurant that that was exactly the problem. So I reached out to my facilities contact at the restaurant chain, okay, big restaurant chain, and I said, hey, we're having some issues. I am 99.9% sure we have undersized ductwork. But I said, I want the manufacturer, Captive Air, to come out here, and I want them to look at this ductwork, and I want them to confirm my diagnosis, because I said the repair on this is going to cost you tens, if not 20s of thousands of dollars. Okay, ridiculous amount of money to fix this ductwork because it's in a shopping mall. It's a nightmare. So the customer said, cool, let's do it. They had Captive Air meet me out there. Captive Air did heat load calcs. They measured airflow. They did all this stuff, and they came to the conclusion that the ductwork was undersized, just like I said it was. But I didn't have confidence, and I wanted their second opinion. So what did the customer do when we found out that we had undersized ductwork? Joshua Jones, dude, thank you very much for that super chat, man. I really, really appreciate it, bud. Okay. So what did the restaurant do? Well, Captive Air quoted the job. I told Captive Air, I said, I don't do construction work like that. I'm not going to replace stainless steel ductwork for the exhaust fan. So I said, why don't you guys quote it? Captive Air quoted it. The restaurant did not go with Captive Air's solution. Captive Air gave them an alternative. They said, well, if you don't want to put new ductwork in here, they had a 3 horsepower exhaust fan. Captive Air said, well, we can put a 5 horsepower in there. Same fan, 5 horsepower gives them the ability, because they were already overloading the motor on the 3 horsepower. They couldn't speed it up any faster, so they ended up going with a 5 horsepower. Gave them a little bit more room to speed it up, but guess what? They called me yesterday saying, hey, we're still having smoke issues, and that was like, 8 months ago that we did that. Oh, I mean, and I called the facilities director and I said, look, I said, you guys didn't want to do that work. I wasn't going to do it. Captive Air was going to do it. I said, I'm just the person telling you what's wrong, and you didn't want to change the ductwork, and now they're having issues. So, I gave the customer all the facts, and I let them make the decisions. I wasn't the one to say, this is going to fix it, this isn't going to fix it. I just said, look, I strongly think that you need to go and listen to them. So in that situation, I'm going to give the customer the information. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. If you don't have proper airflow, in my situation, an exhaust fan, we have smoke in the building. We have issues. The cooks are coughing. They don't like it. The customers are unhappy. If you have an air conditioner in a residential home that's undersized for whatever reason, because there's air leaks, because there's poor windows, whatever, the customer only has one solution. They need to solve the undersized issue. Now, the customer actually has another solution. If they have a residential home and you have an undersized AC, you have an opportunity. I mean, I don't know why they'd want to do this over the air conditioner, but theoretically, they could put new windows in the house. They could spend a bunch of money doing insulation, which would be a smart thing for them. And then theoretically, they could reduce the heat load infiltration to the house. Most of the time, though, the customer's just going to want to go with a bigger air conditioner. In California, that's pretty common. In Florida, you guys need to be careful about that, because you guys have humidity. You guys have mold issues. See, California, we have dry air. So if we oversize a unit, it short cycles. I mean, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but you'll be okay. You oversize a unit in Florida, you can have some problem. You oversize or undersize a unit in Florida, you're going to have issues. Either way, you're going to have humidity issues. You're going to have all kinds of things. So, damn Coke nose. Again, I just saw a super chat come through or something. Thank you very much. Let's see if I missed it. I know I missed something here. I answered Joshua Jones. Okay. Oh, Crux says, again, thank you. I'll definitely look at your email, bud. Thank you very much for that super chat, man. All right. Thoughts on exposed ducts on roofs on commercial buildings? I mean, okay, so what? It's just another opportunity. If you have exposed ducts on the roof, you're going to have more infiltration of heat. So the customer needs to make a decision on whether or not they want to properly insulate that with some sort of thick insulation material, and then possibly a reflective something or other to help, get some of the sun off of it or something like that. Damn, gross. It's like a nervous thing or something. I'm not nervous. I do these streams all the time. Do I ever have issues with home warranty type doing a half job that creates problems? Similar. I mean, I do commercial refrigeration, but I have other contractors that do half-ass jobs, and then I have to go clean up the messes. Look up I'm really starting to like the other company. That was the title of the video, and that was a job that I went in behind them, and they screwed that thing up. And I spent one night there and then another day there just cleaning that crap up. It was a mess. It's crazy. What should you do if your company doesn't have the customer's best interest in mind? Josh, you have to do what's best for you and your family. If you can't work there, it hurts you, it bothers you that they're being dishonest to the customer, you need to make that decision. You know, you need to make an educated decision. But remember something. I'm not saying that there's not shady companies out there, because there is. But a lot of people would look at me as a contractor and think that the statement has been said, you charge too much money for that part. A customer said that to me. That's too much money for that part. You shouldn't make whatever your markup is, 40%, 50%, 60%, 70%, 100% markup. Oh, that's not fair. That's highway robbery. No, it's not. It's a real simple thing, guys. Go somewhere else. So if someone's willing to spend the money with that company, either they like something about them or they're not doing their research. Shame on them. That's not the company's fault. Now, is the company shady? Yeah. As a technician, do you feel like they're ripping people off? Well, then you need to make a decision, right? But just remember that just because, you know, you think that a contractor, the company you're working for charges too much. I'm not saying this is your thing, but I'm just saying in general. Some people think that, oh, that's highway robbery. They charge $500 to change a capacitor. Well, there's a lot that goes into changing a capacitor, and there's a lot that goes into running a company, okay? So, you know, just because you have high prices doesn't mean you're ripping people off, because if people are still choosing to go with you, then there's some, either they really like that contractor or the people are just dumb. I don't know, you know, but I'm really kind of conflicting in my answer there. But you know, if you don't feel good at a company, you need to make the best decision for you and your family. Okay. If it goes against your morals, then you know the decision you have to make. I can't make it for you. You have to do what's best for you and your own. Oh, great. Jake, what brand long sleeve shirts do I use? I use the Dickies brand. The Dickies workwear. I use the tan or khaki colored is my color that I use. And I wear long sleeve shirts all day long, to the point that actually I got a farmer's tan just from this weekend because I went out with my wife on a kayak. On another note, on my last video, I said this weekend I got to get away because I went to my dad's house. My dad lives by the beach, about 40 miles from my house. And my wife and I dropped our kids off at someone's house and spent the night out there to go out to dinner with my dad. It's my birthday coming up. So anyways, we went out with him just as a birthday celebration. It was super nice. But anyways, on the last stream, I was saying how I'm like really, you know, infatuated about a kayak, or I think I said it on the overtime. I don't know, whatever. But I've been really thinking about getting a kayak. And my dad has one, and I've never been in it before. So I went out on the bay. My dad lives in Long Beach, California. So I went out on the bay with my wife. And we went, he has a double tandem kayak, and we were out riding it. And I was kind of hoping that going out on my dad's kayak was going to make me not want to kayak anymore. Nope, it didn't. I got a nice farmer's tan too, but now it makes me want to kayak even more. It's funny how that stuff, I'm going to punch myself in the nose, man. Anyways, now that I went off on something you guys didn't even ask me. Let me see. All right, what am I missing here? My thoughts on ProPest for line sets and condensate. Okay, so Sporlan has the Zoom lock tool. I haven't come across an opportunity to use it. I have some, I keep saying I have an opportunity, but I genuinely haven't done that job. It's been like 4 months now. I have walking equipment to install at a restaurant. But the Zoom lock tool is a compression style tool. The fittings have O-rings in them. Sporlan is behind that tool, and they're pushing it. It's a great tool as long as you can use it. What do I think about ProPress? ProPress for gas lines or water lines, that's great. If you have the opportunity and it can save you money or save you time, I think it's great. But the important thing when it comes to any of those things, ProPress, Zoom Lock, any of those is, good God. God damn it. This is like a nervous twitch and it's starting to piss me off. The problem with those is you need to follow the installation instructions. Okay. The installation instructions are really going to help you. If you don't follow the installation instructions, it's going to end in epic failure, whether it be with the Zoom Lock, the ProPress, insert name of compression tool. Okay. Make sure you are, thank you very much, Raphael, for that super chat, bud. That's really awesome. Make sure you're reading the instructions and following the manufacturer's installation guidelines, and they'll probably work fine. So I think they're great. Go for it. Whatever's best right there, right? Thanks, guys. All right, let me see what else we got in here. Yeah, I know. My nose is freaking falling off the map. And it's just like a stupid live stream thing. I'm not nervous at all. All right. Let me see what else I got on my list here. John had asked me a question, and I'm actually going to pull a picture up real quick because this is a really good question. So let me do a screen share. And we'll do a display capture. Close that out. Close that out. And I'm going to transition this over here. So he had asked me a question. He sent me this picture, and it's of a Heatcraft data tag for an evaporator coil for a walk-in cooler. Okay. There's all kinds of great information on here. There's a serial number that says it was manufactured in 2007. There's a model number that has iWorld Leader. Thank you very much for that super chat, and I'll look at your email, bud. If you guys can't tell, I'm rubbing my nose right now too because it's itching like crazy. But he was asking me about the refrigerant. So on a Heatcraft evaporator coil, he noticed that it says R12, R22, R502, and R404. And he was asking me, what does that mean? Does that mean that you can use all those different gases with that coil? Okay. Yes, it does, but it's not quite as simple as that. Okay. Just because those refrigerants are on that label doesn't mean that you can just put those refrigerants in that coil and walk away. With each one of those refrigerants, you're more than likely going to require a different nozzle in the distributor, a different expansion valve, a different power head, okay? And the BTU output of the coil is going to change with the different refrigerants. So, yes, that coil can work with any one of those refrigerants. And the fact that it can work with those refrigerants means it can pretty much work with any refrigerant minus ammonia and CO2. Basically it's saying that the coil itself is rated for those refrigerants, okay? But you can't just drop it in and move on. You have to size the valves right, the distributors right, the nozzle in the distributor. You have to do all that, okay? So hopefully that answers your question there, bud. And then Sean had asked me about space saver coils. So Sean wanted to know, this is getting silly now. Freaking nose is turning red. Sean wanted to know about space saver coils. So a space saver coil is a ceiling mounted evaporator coil, okay? And they call them space misers, I think is what they used to call them, but now they call them space savers. But oftentimes on a space saver coil, the airflow is reversed. So the air will be pulled in the evaporator motors and it'll blow out the side of the coil. And the coil is long. It sits usually about 8 to 10 inches below the roof deck, and it's mounted. It's long. I've worked on them a lot in my videos. You have to be very careful on those because they have a reverse airflow fan blade on them. Again, I think I made a video about saying something about I'm starting to like my competition, or I'm still liking my competition or whatever, because I went out on a walk-in cooler call and my competitor kept having icing up issues, and I went out there and I found, oh, well, you got the fan blades on wrong, and it was a space saver coil. Okay, so you have to understand the direction of flow on those space saver coils is the air goes in the fan blade and out the coils. All right, let's see what else we got. Frankie had asked me, why would capillary tubes clog up on a refrigerator that has never had service gauges put on it? That's a good question. So the theory that he's getting at with that is that majority of the time capillary tubes, this is, again, I'm assuming by the way he asked the question that he thinks that capillary tubes clog up because people put gauges on there and maybe mix refrigerants or something like that. While there might be some truth in that statement, that's not actually the case, okay? Capillary tubes oftentimes, especially on systems with polyester oil, especially with R134A, which was almost every refrigerator 20 years ago, capillary tubes would plug up very often, okay? And it's really simple. You know what causes capillary tubes to plug up? Do you know why so many people talk about on a true refrigerator, the cap tubes always plug up? It's a stupid true refrigerator. They designed it wrong. Or Beverage Air or Hvacr or whatever. The cap tubes always plug up. It's not the manufacturer's fault. It's not. It's the owner of the restaurant. They're not maintaining their equipment. Why does a capillary tube plug up on a system that's never had gauges put on it because the customer is not keeping the equipment clean. So if you understand what's happening inside the system, as the condenser gets dirty, the condensing temp rises, the oil starts to get contaminated because the oil is being overheated. Okay, when the oil gets overheated, buildup starts to happen. It gets waxy, it gets thick, and it starts to plug up capillary tubes. So it's not the manufacturer that did something wrong. They're not doing that, okay? It's the customer not maintaining their equipment properly. The preventative maintenance that's being done on that condenser is not being cleaned enough. That's why capillary tubes plug up on a system that's never had service gauges put on it. The system was overheating. Whether it could be too that the equipment's installed in a really bad location, you know, it doesn't have proper airflow, that kind of stuff. But capillary tubes don't just plug up, and it's not the refrigerant's fault. It's it's the mixture of the refrigerant with the oil and overheating that causes the oil to get thick and start to... the easiest way I could explain it is that if you have an overheated polyester oil system, it's kind of like coagulated bacon grease, okay? It starts to get thick and it starts to plug up the capillary tubes and it doesn't flow through the system anymore. That's the easiest way to describe it. All right. Let's see what else. Sight glass before or after filter dryer. It doesn't matter, okay? Yes, I know the sight glass police are going to tell you, theoretically, in a perfect world, you should put the sight glass after the filter dryer. The reason why is because if there's contaminants in the system, theoretically, little flakes of whatever, the dryer is going to capture the contaminants before it gets into the sight glass. But guys, it's not a big deal. You can put the sight glass before or after the filter dryer. It's going to work the same. Not a big deal. There's nothing wrong with installing a sight glass before or after. It's the same. Yeah, my nose is, I'm going to have to, because this is driving me nuts right now. So with an R22 system, let me get through my list to make sure that I can actually answer the questions that were on here. Let me see. Let me close this out. That was the video thing. Okay. Adam, I already answered that question. Cool. I got through that one. Let me go on to here. Glenn asks about, great question. Glenn asked me a question about working with my father. Glenn is actually thinking about going to work with his dad, and he wanted my thoughts about working with your father. So, I said in the beginning of the stream, I've worked with my dad all my life. Okay. I've had good times and bad times working with my dad. I grew up working for my dad. I was a kid. I became a preteen. I became a teenager. I'm just a normal kid. I do dumb shit. I said stupid things. I thought my dad was wrong when my dad wasn't wrong. My dad said stupid shit to me. Different things. We're human. We're people. To expect a relationship to be absolutely perfect when you put it under the stress of a work environment is silly, okay? So what do I think about working with my dad? It's the best thing I've ever done in my life. I love working for my dad, okay? Yes, we've had rough patches. Yes, I've been a dumbass and we butted heads because I thought I was, insert whatever. I need to make more money. I need to do this. I need to do that. But guess what? The best thing I've ever done. I would redo it all over again without changing a single thing if I had the opportunity. And my dad's still with me and he still works with me. But to have the opportunity to work with my dad again, I would do it all over again because I love working with my dad, okay? You have to be able to communicate. You have to know, you have to be able to talk. I have to know when to keep my mouth shut on a decision that my dad makes, and vice versa. When I make a decision, he knows, okay, Chris made that decision. I'm gonna listen to him, even if he doesn't agree with me, and the same goes for me with him, okay? So the best thing I ever did was work with my dad, but you have to have a relationship on which you communicate. In the past, I didn't do so well at communicating. I went and saw a therapist. I learned that I was screwing a lot of things up. I had mommy issues and all kinds of things, okay? But the best thing I've ever done, working with my dad. Love it. I'll continue to do it again. I'd do it over again, even through all the hurdles that we went through, okay? And yes, we did butt heads, and yes, we've had some hard times, but it's the best thing I've ever done. I learned everything that I know from my dad. And I've said this many times, whether it be, he didn't teach me all my technical skills, but my dad taught me how to research, taught me integrity, taught me to be the person that I am today, that gave me the tools to learn how to research and learn the technical stuff and learn how to be humble, and that kind of stuff. So I would do it all over again. All right, let me see what I'm missing. Can I give apprentices that are just getting into this trade some advice and guidance? Yeah, I can. As anybody getting into this trade right now, okay? What I would suggest you do, and I'm gonna lump in a couple questions together because I have some on my list right now. First off, let's start this with industry certifications, okay? NATE, the RSES CM exam, the ESCO insert, whatever. I can't think of certifications, any kind of certification, okay? People ask, is NATE worth it? Because they charge you money every year. Any certification, in my opinion, is better than no certification, okay? If I have a NATE certification, does that mean that I am a rock star service technician? No, it does not, okay? Because anybody can pass a test, right? Does the fact that I have an RSES CM exam mean that I'm a rock star technician? That gives you more clout than any of them in my book, okay? Because I've failed the RSES CM exam 2 times, okay? And I passed the NATE all 4 or 5 times that I've taken it without ever studying, okay? But that's a whole nother thing. Any certification doesn't mean that you're the best technician in the world, okay? A certification in general, an RSES certification, an ESCO certification, a NATE certification, they all require that you do continuing education. So the reason why I like certification, industry certifications, is because it requires that you continue your education. So I have a NATE certification. In order to maintain that NATE certification, I have to go to classes on a regular. That's part of the thing, and you have to pay a fee, okay? So any certification is better than none, okay? Now, apprentices, what can you do to get better? Educate yourself, okay? When you're done at work as an apprentice, your job is not over. Your job is just starting, because while you were at work, whether you were at the union hall, whether you were at a school, whether you were out on an actual ride-along or anything, you should have been taking pictures, writing down information of things you didn't know, so that way when you go home, you can research them, okay? Your job starts when you get off work, because that's when you take pictures of models and serial numbers, equipment that you don't know what it does. You take a model and serial number, name, a picture of it, and you go Google and you do a bunch of research about it, okay? As far as working with someone, right? You're working with a journeyman tech that's a butthead. He's rude. He talks down to you, whatever. Keep your mouth shut and bite your tongue. Don't ever let someone abuse you. Okay, don't let people abuse you and call you names and whatever. But at the same time, know when to keep your mouth shut. If you see someone doing something that you know is wrong, don't be a dick about it. Politely ask them at the right time, hey, when I was in school, they said you're supposed to do things a little bit differently. And I'm curious why you do it that way, because maybe my school is wrong. Can you educate me on why you did it this way, but when I was in school, they said to do it this way? You ask him at the right time, not when he's stressed out, not when he's trying to do something, okay? Because he probably has a reason as to why he did it the way that he did it. Maybe he was taking a shortcut. Maybe he wasn't. Who knows, okay? So be humble as a service technician. Be observant. Be eager, okay? Very importantly, you need to know what I need before I need it. So when you're working with me and you're my go-getter, you're getting my tools and whatever, you need to remember things. If you've gone down to my van and you've gotten me my vacuum pump, and then a couple weeks later, I send you down to my van and you get me my vacuum pump again, the third time that I ask you, you better not ask me where the damn vacuum pump is, because you've had every opportunity to remember the 2 other times you went down to my van and you got that vacuum pump. You know where it is. Keep your eyes open and get your head in the job, okay? Now, when it comes to tools and different things like that, I like to give my guys 2 shots, okay? Give me a crescent wrench. What's a crescent wrench? It's that, okay? Give me a crescent wrench. What's a crescent wrench? It's that. The third time, you better know what a crescent wrench is, okay? Don't waste my time on that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff you need to do. You need to be bettering yourself. Going to work, you're going to learn things, but you also have to try to learn on your own. You have to know when to keep your mouth shut. You have to try to predict what I'm going to ask you for. If we're running a line set, you've done it with me a couple times. You should know by now. Hey, I'm going to need these tools. So while you're down in the van, hey, I'm going down to get something else. Do you mind if I get the other things you're asking me, so that way I don't have to go down again? Yeah, great. Good job. You're thinking outside the box. You're thinking about the job. You're doing that. So those are a few things you can do as an apprentice. How do I measure my nose at superheat? I don't know, dude, but I am freaking losing my mind right now. What are my thoughts on techs asking for pay raises during the pandemic? That's an interesting one. So, I think that during the pandemic, it's probably a little bit harder to ask for a pay raise, but as a service tech, you're probably going to know when you genuinely deserve it. And if the company's doing really well, then, you know, it's probably not it's probably not bad to ask for a raise as long as you sit down. That's a great question though. So, you know, what's the best way to ask for a raise? Here's how I would ask for a raise. Here's how I have asked for a raise when I was working for my father, right? I sat down with my dad and I said, look, I said, you know, we've been doing really well lately and things have been going good, but I said, I'm not where I want to be financially, Dad. I said, so what I want to know from you is what can I do to make your job easier so that theoretically I could make more money? I want to get on that roadmap. And I asked him like that, what can I do? So I didn't go to him and say, I deserve a raise. I went to him and said, what do I have to do to help you to make your job easier so that I could get a pay raise? That's how you should ask for a raise. Okay. Now, if you've waited so very long, you know, and it's been 10 years and you haven't asked for a raise and now you're bitter and you're pissed off and you're just angry, you deserve a raise. But guess what? You haven't asked for a raise for 10 years. So it's kind of your fault too. Now, at the same time, the company should be on top of that because I have lost employees because, you know, we were busy and I wasn't thinking straight and, you know, I should have given them more money. They left for like, you know, a couple bucks extra and, you know, they got bitter and things like that. And that was my fault because as a business owner, it is also my job to make sure that my guys are happy and they don't get to the point that they're miserable, you know, but also just because they're miserable doesn't mean they deserve a raise either. Okay. So there's multiple sides to that story. All right. What am I missing here? Yeah, I am. Okay. Right on. Okay. So I am, one last question I had on here. Marcus had asked me, how did I start my business and how can he start his own? Well, first off, I did not start my business. I was working for my father. My father had an existing business and I grew up in the trade. So I have to give all the credit to our business to my dad. Now, my dad and I have since partnered. We run the business together now. Okay. So I am not the person to tell you how to start your business. But I will say, there is an influx right now, and I want you guys to be careful. There is a lot of people on Facebook and Instagram. There is a lot of people out there that are claiming to be amazing people. They post these pictures. Their businesses are doing so well. I just bought 12 service trucks. I'm doing this. I have this many technicians. We're doing this much in sales. Okay, that may be true. But there's always two sides and the grass is usually greener on the other side, right? Or at least people think it is. Don't necessarily trust all these business coach style people that are selling you, you know, I'll come fly to you and charge you this much money and I'll teach you how to start a business and do all that. You got to be cautious about that stuff. There is good guys that do that out there too, but there's also a lot of people that are very inexperienced that have only been running their business for 6 months and they decide to start a coaching business just because they have amazing sales right now, you know. So be very careful about that when it comes to starting a business, who you trust. Okay. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Do a lot of research. Just because someone is killing it on Instagram doesn't mean they're killing it in real life. Okay. Just because someone has all these cool pictures on Facebook and tells you how good they're doing and how many trucks they have, anybody can make a payment, guys. Remember that. Okay. So, you know, I can go buy 12 service trucks today too. I'd leverage my ass out and I'd mess with my family's livelihood. I'm not comfortable doing that. Okay. So just be cautious about the whole business thing. All right. So I answered that question and let me see what we got going on in the chat. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and, end the technical portion of this. Okay. And we're just going to kind of bullshit for a minute because I'm not going to do an after show because I did realize it's almost 7 o'clock now. So I've been going for 2 hours and I'm not used to these 2-hour streams. So when I'm done, but I'm going to talk for a few minutes just about whatever. I do need to put my nose on ice. So how often do I use the ASHRAE book? That is right behind me. There's a green ASHRAE book right. Good God, dummy. Right there. There's a green ASHRAE standards book. I think it's the 2019 ASHRAE standards book. I don't ever use it. I had joined ASHRAE accidentally, to be honest with you. ASHRAE is an engineering organization. It's just not my cup of tea. I don't need to be part of ASHRAE. Nothing against it. There's lots of great information and knowledge in the ASHRAE organization, but I just didn't need to be part of it. And as part of the when I signed up for it, I got a book for free. So I don't use the ASHRAE manual. I'm not a design engineer. I don't design things very much. So, all right, let's see what else. All right. So remember something. I'm going to close this out right now, and this is going to be it for real. Okay. But remember something. We spend our days at work. We work really hard. For some of us, we have a support staff at home. I have been known to do this, to ignore my support staff, my kids, my wife. I've been known to come home stressed out and angry, and my kids have seen it in my face. They've seen me when I come home after a long day. And granted, I'm not wrong for being angry and stressed out, but at the same time, my kids don't understand that. Sometimes my kids, they just want to give me a hug. They just want to they just want to show me what they bought at the dress store, right? That's my pet peeve. My daughter loves to show me what she tries on. When she goes clothes shopping, she loves to do a fashion show for me. Guys, I hate seeing a fashion show, but I do it every time because I'm not a perfect person, and I realize I have a lot of flaws, and I realize that my support staff, my daughter, my daughters, plural, my wife, they're home, okay? And yes, they're not out working in the 110-degree heat with me, but they're home. They're waiting for me. They're excited to see me when I get home. So remember that, guys. Make time for your family. I know it's hard. Take some vacation, whatever you got to do. Spend some time with your loved ones. It's very important, okay? I am going to wrap this up. There is not going to be an after show. I can't say that enough, okay? I'm really, really wrapping this up. I'm going to cue up the outro music right now. Pull up the intro picture. And I really, really appreciate you guys coming in here. And I'm going to play my outro. If y'all could do one thing, if y'all could take one thing from my videos or my live streams, please stop, take a second, take a step back, and look at the big picture.